Coach Saban is well known for being a defensive guy, and I can't fault him for that. I just didn't really have that great of a relationship with him. It was tough for me to understand why I wasn't really given transparency.
And I don't think some of you are ready for what I'm about to say next. There's no way you can even try to guess what Barnett did instead of pursuing a football career. Nine years ago, Blake Barnett was the #1 quarterback in the class of 2015. Only 4 years later, he would completely and entirely throw his football career away. But the question remains even till this day. Why? We see time after time our fair share of 4- and 5-star quarterback recruits not live up to all the hype and expectations, but they still have somewhat of a decent career. A lot of times these guys will play college football for a couple of years, be a backup in the NFL, and then they'll join the Arena Football League or the Canadian Football League, something like that. Well, with Blake Barnett here, none of that happened, and he pretty much just fell off the face of the earth. And why this is one of the more interesting case studies I've ever taken a look at is because he wasn't just a 5-star recruit, he was the #1 overall quarterback in the nation. As you can see on your screen right here, that's not my opinion, it's a cold hard fact. Oh yeah, I almost forgot to throw in there. This guy was the starting quarterback at the University of Alabama. What about that? Coming out of high school, he wasn't just given that #1 quarterback ranking for no reason. It all made sense. He was roughly 6'5", 200 pounds, perfect and ideal body frame, he could pass it great, and he could scramble a little bit as well. I'm telling you, it's a fascinating situation, and here's what I'm talking about. 6'5", 200 pounds? Check. He's not undersized. If anything, he's the perfect size. He wasn't even labeled as a dual threat quarterback, so it's not like he wouldn't have fit in a college system or the NFL system. He was a pocket passer. His accuracy, check. His arm strength, check. His IQ on the field, check. And he could also read defenses. And unlike most of the stories we do on this channel, he didn't get in any trouble off the field whatsoever. He was a great, humble young man. Didn't have attitude problems, came from a great family. Also, he worked extremely hard. Everything lined up perfectly. So why didn't it work out? That's the $1,000,000 question everybody's asking, and I'm going to continue to go back to this all throughout this video. What's got me so perplexed is the fact that he just threw everything away just like that. There's many questions people have been asking about this guy even till this day. But however, it all circles back to the one, and I mean the one big question we're going to try to get to the bottom of in today's video. What really happened to Blake Barnett? Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, hope all of you are having a great day. If not, hope this video can make it a little bit better. Real quick, if you don't listen to a single part of this video, please just hear me out for the next minute because I have to explain myself. So 2 years ago, I made this video you're looking at right here. And this picture is going to look familiar because, and as a matter of fact, this video might sound familiar because we've already made it before. If some of you remember that video, or if you don't, I'll catch you up to speed on things. The entire video got trashed. Why did it get trashed? Why did it get ruined? Because the highlights I used in that video, unfortunately, it's just the way things go on YouTube sometimes. They got copyrighted by a company, and they gave me two choices. I could either A, take down the video entirely, or B, I could blur the video footage and still keep the video up. Obviously, since the video's still up on YouTube, I wound up going with option B. I just blurred the video footage and kept it up because I put in a ton of work into that video. I didn't want to take it down. The sad part is it just completely ruined the video. It ruined the watching experience because it's just a blurry screen all throughout the video. It's terrible. And since that has happened 2 years ago, you could say I turned into Michael Jordan and I took it personal. I haven't forgotten about it, and I've always told myself I'm going to remake the video one day. Well, guess what? Today's that day. We're remaking the video, and also we do have some new updates, so it's going to be like a revamped version of it. And another thing that's bothered me as well is people to this day are still watching that video and they all comment the same thing. They're like, man, what happened to the video? Why is it blurry? So that's that. And even if you did see that video 2 years ago, you probably forgot what happened all throughout his career and story. And two, like I said, we have new updates. I hope you guys are as excited to get into this video as I am. Also, I hope it doesn't get copyrighted if it happens. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. Strap in, buckle up, get you a snack, get you a popcorn, get your favorite meal you like to when you watch a video, because trust me, I do the same thing. But all right, man, blah, blah, shut the crap up. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. Woo! Man, oh man, we got good old Blake Barnett. If you're an Alabama fan, this name should ring a bell. If you're not an Alabama fan, and well, you probably might have heard of him a time or two. And come on, man, you already know. To get into Mr. Blake Barnett's story, we got to throw it all the way back to where things started. Barnett grew up in Corona, California, and he played his high school football at Santiago High School. Normally when we make these videos, especially when we're talking about former 4/5-star recruits, we say something along the lines of, oh yeah, this guy was starting quarterback for his varsity team as an 8th or 9th grader. But with Barnett, that wasn't the case. As a freshman at Santiago High School, he was a quarterback for the freshman team. Not even JV, but the freshman team. Fast forward time a little bit, as a 10th grader, which is a sophomore, he was a JV quarterback starting in the backup for varsity. I do want to talk about this a little bit because at this point in time, he's not on the trajectory of even not just going to a big time D1 school or NFL. That's out of the picture. He's not even on the trajectory to getting an offer or a scholarship. He didn't even wind up starting for his varsity team until his junior season of high school. So at this point in time, he's only got really 2 years to prove himself to all these colleges. But here's the kicker with all this. In that first start of his junior year, that game was nationally televised. If you're trying to get some offers and some recognition, that's a pretty good situation to be in. Because if you go out there as the starting quarterback on a high school team in a nationally televised game and you ball out, yeah, you're going to get a couple phone calls. You probably can guess what I'm about to say next. Blake Barnett, he took advantage of the opportunity and he went off in that game. Some of these video clips I'm going to be showing you in this video comes from a YouTube channel that goes by the name of Skylar Lara, or Lara. I hope I'm saying that correctly. If I am saying it wrong, I do apologize. He did an interview with Barnett. If you are interested in that, I'm going to leave a link to his channel and more specifically a link to that video down below in the description. I will be using a couple bits and pieces from this interview, so I do want to give a major shout out to him and his channel.
So that game was televised and it was just an offensive shootout. It was like the final score was 45-47, something crazy. And I had pretty good numbers that game. I think I threw for over 300, had like 120 rushing, couple touchdowns. And
although Barnett went off in game number 1, it wasn't until after game number 4 as a junior in high school till he got his first scholarship offer from UCLA. And after that, it was madness.
By game 4, my junior year, I got my first scholarship offer from UCLA. It went crazy after that. I mean, like schools showing up to my high school constantly on a weekly basis. And 4 weeks before that, they didn't even know who I was.
This is fairly common in the recruiting process, and I would like to label it as a snowball effect. The hardest offer to get is the first one. Everything after that, it just piles on. And honestly, here's what it's really like. I'll give you a better example and put it into a better perspective so people like me and you can relate. If you were in a relationship in high school, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Have you ever noticed right when you get in a relationship or when you're in a relationship, that's when the most girls are hitting on you? However, when you're single, it seems like all those girls that were hitting you up, trying to, I guess you'd say, steal you away from your girl, they're not hitting you up anymore. Why is that? It's really a psychological thing, and it's the same thing with these colleges. If a girl sees you in a relationship with another girl, they immediately think, there's got to be some good characteristic traits about this guy for that girl to want him and want to be with him. Whereas if you're single, girls are looking at it from this perspective, whether it's right or not. Oh, he's single? Well, I don't want somebody that other people don't want. May not be the best example, but it's a similar process in recruiting in high school. When all these colleges see Blake Barnett as a junior, hasn't really played too much, has zero offers, they're not thinking twice about it. They're like, yeah, who cares? But then, when all these other colleges saw UCLA offer him, they're like, wait a minute. Why did UCLA offer him? Why do they want him? Well, if they want him, I want him. If you think I'm wrong on all that, just listen to this story from Blake Barnett. I'll let him take it from here.
Literally, I remember going to camps my sophomore year, going to Nike camps, going to UCLA camp, San Jose State. I went to those camps and no one knew who I was. And I was there and I felt as though I performed as well as anyone did. But because I didn't have quite the notoriety yet and I hadn't played varsity level, no one really could care less. And then, 5 games into my junior year, I was getting offers like crazy.
I thought that was pretty interesting. Great insight there from Mr. Blake Barnett. And it also goes to show and prove how quickly your life can change. To start his junior season, he had 0 offers. Nobody was interested in him. 5-6 weeks later, everybody in the country wants him. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, that's what I like to call the snowball effect. Continuing along here, you don't need me to sit up here and hype up his junior and senior season. You know he went off. He continued to go out there and perform, and next thing you know, you look up, he's got a 5-star ranking beside his name. He was at the Elite 11. He just continued to climb up the rankings, and he earned the #1 overall pocket passer ranking in the nation. By the end of his senior season at Santiago High School, everybody and their mama wants him, and a lot of people, They remember him for committing and signing with Alabama, but here's what you don't know. He didn't go there first, or commit there first, my apologies. He committed to Notre Dame. Our man Skylar here actually asked him about that, and yeah, let's see what he's got to say about it.
You were actually committed to Notre Dame. What kind of happened there? Why did you flip?
Prior to the USC game, it was my junior year. I met with Coach Kelly. Like, he brought me into the office probably 2 hours before the game, offered me a scholarship, walk out on the field, and you're in Notre Dame Stadium looking at touchdown Jesus. And it was just very surreal. And it was like a, oh crap kind of moment when that was like the first like real deal big time offer I got, which, was 4 weeks after my first offer, which is crazy to think about. And that kind of just, it built up. I was excited about it. That led to the impulse decision of being like, I want to go here.
He commits to Notre Dame. It seemed all fine and dandy, but here's the real reason as to why he decommitted.
Fast forward, I ended up going to another game. The second game I went to was a little bit closer to the end of fall. So it was getting a little colder, and it was like snowing sideways. And it was funny because I was at a game on a Saturday that was snowing sideways. The night before, I was playing a game in California, and it was probably like 78, nice sunset. And the following day, I'm at a cold game, and it just wasn't for me, man.
And I find this really ironic because I tell you guys time after time after time when we talk about these 4- and 5-star recruits, unless it's a prestigious program like Ohio State, these guys do not want to play in cold and miserable weather. They want to play in the South because it's warm, or on the West Coast because it's also warm.
Looking back, I think it would have been a great opportunity, but it just didn't feel right at the time.
I know Blake's trying to be nice about it. You can tell from this interview. Great dude, humble, outstanding young man, genuine guy. But we know what he's trying to say. Yeah, I don't want to play in the freezing cold, and I don't blame him. Perspective's everything. This guy was used to playing in weather that was 75 degrees and sunny 24/7. That's a hard transition. Getting that out the way, though, he decommits to Notre Dame, and this is where he officially commits and signs with Alabama right after. And this is where things in our story, ladies and gentlemen, they start to really, and I mean really get interesting. You better lock in. He gets to Tuscaloosa, Alabama in the year 2015. He immediately redshirts, didn't play. To give you some more context, that 2015 year, that was the Jacob Coker season when Alabama won the championship with him. Well, fast forward time a little bit into 2016, Coker leaves, and there's an open quarterback battle between Jalen Hurts and Blake Barnett. And this is a piece of Alabama history that a lot of people tend to forget. Blake Barnett, a guy a lot of people have never even heard of, beat out Jalen Hurts for a starting quarterback spot in 2016. He started the opener against USC, and I remember that game just like it was yesterday. I don't even got to look it up. I don't know why I remember that game so well, but Blake Barnett, he starts out the game with back-to-back 3-and-outs, and USC jumps out on Alabama 3-0 early. After the second series, Blake Barnett gets replaced by Jalen Hurts, and the rest is history. Hurts never let go of the job, and he balled out in that game. Alabama stomped USC 52-6. And you got to feel bad for Blake Barnett, you do, because he only had 2 series to prove himself, and unfortunately the offense didn't click. They put in Hurts, and yeah, offense clicked when Hurts went in, and it wasn't anything like Blake Barnett did bad. He wasn't atrocious in there. It's just the offense didn't execute when he was in there. I'm actually curious. Let me pull up the stat sheet from that game, because I believe he only attempted a couple of passes. Okay, I got to put it up right here. Look at this stat sheet. Blake Barnett in the game in which he lost the starting quarterback battle went 5 for 6, had 100 yards with 1 touchdown. And it's not like Jalen Hurts played out of his mind in that game either. He made a couple of long touchdown passes, which were nice, but he was 6 for 11. That's about roughly 57 completion percentage, 120 yards, 2 touchdowns to 1 INT. QBR right at 72. But it goes back to this, and you had to watch the game to remember it. The box score doesn't do it any justice. When Hurts was in there, the offense was so fluent, clicking on all cylinders. With Barnett, it was a little, how shall I say this? A little rough. The rest of that season for Jalen Hurts, he goes on and he has a phenomenal freshman season. On the other hand, for Barnett, and this is where things got really, and I mean really controversial, and he caught a lot of heat for this back in the day, he transferred in the middle of the season. I remember stating at the time I thought it was a terrible move, it was the wrong move, and I still believe that even till this day. If you were going to leave Alabama, I believe you should have finished out the entire season, then left, like Jalen Hurts did a few years later. Jalen Hurts was a backup to Tua the entire season, and he didn't enter the portal. He didn't leave to sit down a year? No, he finished a year, then he transferred to Oklahoma, which I admire and respect greatly. Barnett didn't do that. He left Alabama in the middle of the season, and it rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. I'm really glad I'm making this video, and I'm glad Skylar here did this interview with Barnett because we get to hear his side of the story. Remember, there's two sides to every story. According to Barnett, there was a quote-unquote lack of clarity between him, Nick Saban, and Lane Kiffin. He stated that Nick Saban was more of a defensive-minded head coach, and he didn't get a real connection with him because he spent 90% of his time with the defense. That's who he focused on.
And then what ultimately kind of led to the decision of me transferring, what was really tough for me to comprehend at that time when I was at that age was just a sense of clarity as to why things really happened. It was tough for me to understand why I wasn't really given transparency.
I'm going to pause it right there. Number one, I don't think Barnett has any reason to lie about this. Number two, I also don't believe he's the type of guy to make excuses. I think what happened here is there was a major miscommunication, and obviously Barnett wasn't too fond of the way things were going on.
One of the biggest things I wanted coming out of high school was a relationship with my head coach or my offensive coordinator. Coach Saban is well known for being a defensive guy, and I can't fault him for that, but 90% of his time is spent with the defense. So because of that, I just didn't really have that great of a relationship with him, to the point where I felt as though we could like trust each other in communication. And then Coach Kiffin at the time was just kind of distant to an extent, if that's a word I want to use. Like, he was just, very focused, very busy. At the time, I found out that like if I were to leave, I'd be eligible that time next year, and so I was like on a clock. And in my mind, if I waited one more week, I'd have to sit that week out next year.
That right there is also very key to our story, and I can't tell you enough how glad I am that Barnett is coming out with his side of the story, because it all makes sense. If you don't understand what he's saying here, I'll show you a little bit more. He is stating the reason he left in the fashion that he did is because he had to leave right away so he could be eligible for the season after. In other terms here, every week that was passing by was another week he wasn't going to be eligible for the next season. It kind of seems like to me, and he attests to this point, that he sort of rushed to this decision due to some circumstances.
And so, shotgun decision, ended up leaving. Probably the least politically correct thing I could have done at the time. Now it's accepted a little differently with the transfer portal and all that stuff. But
I got to talk about that. That is a great point he brings up. Back then, he was getting crucified for it. He was getting flamed. Everybody's talking about how he has no character whatsoever. And now the transfer portal, if a player leaves in the middle of the season, nobody bats an eye. It's like, oh yeah, well, that's just modern era of college football, baby. It's crazy how much our sport has changed within the time span of 10 years. Anyways, though, moving along with our story, he winds up transferring to Arizona State. And if Blake Barnett thought he was in a bad situation in Alabama, he was in for a surprise at Arizona State. It was much, and I mean much worse. So the coach that was recruiting him originally at Arizona State told him up front, hey, we're going to give you the best shot in the world to be the starter. We're going to give you every opportunity possible. It's going to be great. As a recruit, that's what you want to hear. You don't want to hear that BS talk saying, oh, yeah, you're our guy. You're going to be the day one starter. No, you want the coach to say, yeah, we're going to give you every opportunity in the world. And that's what happened, or that's what was supposed to happen. Barnett shows up to campus on a Monday. That following Saturday, you can't make this up, the offensive coordinator who recruited him to go to Arizona State, he leaves to take a job at Auburn. In other terms here, and I can't emphasize this enough, and I think he'd agree with me, he got screwed over. That is the biggest fear of any recruit, especially when you're transferring. You go to a new school, you were kind of skittish about it in the first place, you get there, and the coach leaves. You probably know where I'm going with this. Barnett did not win the starting job that year, and here's what he had to say about that.
As far as that competition went, another one of those things I wish I would have been able to just do a little bit more, make it so obvious that the coaches, knew that I should have been the guy. And obviously I didn't do it because I didn't end up starting.
After that year for Arizona State, in which Barnett didn't play in any meaningful action whatsoever, he winds up transferring again, and also Arizona State's head coach got fired. At this point in time in our story, Barnett, he didn't have a lot of options. Left Alabama in a controversial way that left a bad taste in a lot of coaches' mouth. He is now leaving Arizona State, and now people are thinking, well, dang, this guy couldn't even start or play at Arizona State. Why would anybody want him? Fortunately enough for him though, Charlie Strong at USF gave him a phone call. He told him from the jump, we're going to give you an opportunity to win the starting job. There's an open quarterback battle, and that's all Barnett wanted to hear. He just wanted a chance. That junior year in 2018, he winds up winning the starting job, in which he had a decent year. I mean, I'm not going to say it was good. I'm not going to say it was bad. It was just all right, at least in my humble opinion. Completed 61% of his passes. That's all right. 2,700 passing yards with 12 touchdowns to 11 INTs. One thing to throw in there, though, and you got to take into account when you're trying to evaluate his 2018 season, is his offensive line was trash, and he was getting hit at least, I'd say, 10 times per game. I know the 12 touchdowns to 11 interceptions, it's not a great ratio, but also got to throw in there, he did have 8 rushing touchdowns, so that was nice to see. And that's really all there is to say for 2018. Wasn't anything special. Of course, he couldn't enter the NFL draft, so he comes back in 2019. Little did he know, though, and little did everybody else know, this would be his last year of ever playing football again. Early on in that 2019 season, he suffered a season-ending injury. After that injury and season in 2019, what's really interesting was he could have pursued a medical red shirt, but he didn't. He just decided to hang up the cleats entirely. And let's not act like he didn't have some options on his hand. Like I said, he could have played another year of college football potentially, and also he could have played in maybe the Canadian Football League, worked his way up to the NFL or the Arena Football League, something like that. If he really wanted to, he could have continued to play the game of football at some level. However, he decided not to. Well, after doing some research, I'd have to believe this played a big part into his decision to hang up the cleats. He had a wife at the time and also a kid. When you're not in a relationship, and more importantly, when you don't have a son or daughter, your life is your life. Every decision you make, it's for you. However, when you do have a son, when you do have a child, whether that's a girl or boy, it's no longer just about you. It's about the kid. You got to take them into account. And I don't think some of you are ready for what I'm about to say next. There's no way you can even try to guess what Barnett did instead of pursuing a football career. He decided to throw away football, the game he put in countless hours of blood, sweat, and tears into, to pursue a career in barbecuing. Yes, that is right. You heard me correctly. Mr. Blake Barnett started up a barbecue business. I'll show you a look at his business right here. Matter of fact, here's his Instagram page for his business. Go shoot him a follow if you want to check it out. Feel free to do that as well. And I ain't gonna lie, man, that food has got my mouth watering. I like to cook myself. I wouldn't claim to be some barbecue expert, but that looks pretty good. From the pictures, of course, I'd have to see it in person, get a little taste test to do my research, but from the pictures at least, it looks like he knows what he's doing. I'm not going to show too much from his Instagram, but you can tell he's also a big family guy. He has a great family, great wife, and you love to see it. He's also still in the game of football a little bit. He does train people from time to time, but it doesn't seem like it's some big time business like his barbecue thing is. Here's the last thing he had to say about his playing days and his career.
You know, everyone's goal is obviously to get the NFL, but, you know, for my circumstance, it wasn't meant to be. And it's not something that I hold a grudge about. It is what it is, and I'm fortunate for the experiences that I was able to have.
I believe Barnett is a guy who lives in reality, and he understands his time, it was coming to an end. All in all, here's my conclusion as to why he just completely gave up the dream of playing in the NFL. Number one, he just simply knew he wasn't playing at a high level. When you take a look at his stats, although we don't have a large sample size, just taking a look at what he did in 2018 here, he only completed 61% of his passes, 12 touchdowns, 11 INTs. Granted, didn't play for a great team or a really great offensive line. Still, wasn't playing at a very high level. I say that to say this. If he would have somehow, some way entered the NFL draft, he'd have been an undrafted free agent. And best case scenario, and this is absolute best case scenario, he is a backup quarterback. I don't even think that would have happened. He more so would have been a guy that's just floating from practice squad to practice squad. Reason number two is injuries. He was banged up and nicked up all throughout his career at UCF, and that last year he had that season-ending injury, and now I guess you could label it as a career-ending injury. A lot of people fail to realize injuries don't just take a toll on your body, they take a toll on your mental health as well. And last but not least, reason number three, and this might have played the biggest part in all of this, we don't know, I'd love for him to answer this question. He's got a family, and he had a family at the time. I think he wanted to focus on them, raise his kids, and be a great father, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. And I tell you what, From watching that interview, to me at least, he seems like a very happy guy and he wouldn't change anything. He doesn't live with any regrets. He's not mad with how any of this played out. He is totally content. Y'all know what I like to do at the end of these videos. I tell you whether or not I think this guy is a loser or a winner. Well, here's my take on Blake Barnett. Just because he didn't make the NFL, he's not a loser. There's much more to being a winner or loser than playing sports. To me, if you're working hard every single day and you're giving it your best, you're a winner. This story is as simple as this. The cookie didn't crumble his way. He never put his head down. He continued to work hard. It just didn't pan out. Being an NFL quarterback, it wasn't in store for Blake Barnett, and that's fine. There shouldn't be anything controversial about this whatsoever. This guy is the epitome of a winner. He worked hard his entire life. He kept getting knocked down, but here's the key. He kept getting back up. I mean, look at him. He's got a great family. He's extremely happy. He's got a business. This guy's living the dream. I think he's in a great position in life, and I love how this story has ended. I think it's awesome. I love when we have a great ending to these videos. To Blake Barnett, if you are somehow, someway seeing this video, I just want to let you know, brother, I respect you and admire you a ton, and you seem like a cool guy. This seems like a dude who I could just chill with and watch college football with on Saturdays and get along with great. He probably likes to golf as well. Hey, we need to go play some golf, my man. I'm curious. Let me know your thoughts on Barnett's story down below. Also, if you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing. Helps on the channel tremendously. But